get going. Okay, Terry.
Okay, well, it is my pleasure to introduce Diana Creighton, who's going to give our program today. She's one of our very many talented artists that belong to this organization. So it's great to be able to introduce her. I haven't been able to meet her in person because of COVID, but I'm looking forward to that. We had a wonderful conversation on the phone, but hopefully we will get back to in person soon. She is a painter, she is a photographer, she's a many talented artist, and I believe she's going to talk about one of her new themes, which is daily life around the border, which is certainly near to us all, and give us a studio tour. So I want to welcome Diana Creighton.
Thanks.
Take it away.
So I guess I have to screen. Okay. I'm gonna, let's see, I'm gonna screen share, right? Oh, wait. Okay. So can you hear me first? I'm screen sharing. Good.
Diana, could you put your put the thing on the green dot up above? I think that'll make it bigger.
Yes. Okay, there it will. And in fact, I'm going to play this. I put there a lot of slides for you because I had all this work. When you asked me to do this, I thought, well, I went back. So I called this talk going forward and looking back because, and this is a little 12 by 12 I did, in about 2018. I was doing outtakes from some of my paintings, and this guy I thought was appropriate for the title. So I'm going to play this, which means that I'm going to just go through these slides. And behind me, I have this piece. I didn't start out as an artist, even though I wanted to. I was encouraged to be to do literature in college, and which I did, but I always filled in with studio art and art history. So I've been kind of getting around to being this artist over a long period of time with a lot of fits and stops and starts. This is early work. My husband and I moved to Phoenix from the San Francisco Bay Area, and he took over he went into a family business that was very small called the Arizona News Service. It's still publishes the Arizona Capital Times and the Arizona Legislative Report and a number of other online services. And I had kids, I had babies. And so I began to look around for taking workshops like some of these that we're talking about today. And one of them was about dye work. And so these are images of some early work. The one behind me in here by the computer was a big 5 yards of black silk. And I took it and bleached it and then over dyed it. And then later, when I didn't know what to do with it, I made it into a screen. So it's a screen that I've been using in the house for many years. I also did some clamped and bleached black satin. And these are images of the black satin, which I quilted. And this is Stars and Bars. You can tell the way I quilted it and how I bleached it because it was just folded. And except for the border, it was not pieced. That's the only pieced part. The rest was all folded to get this pattern. I did another one called House of Mirrors, and that was a pieced quilt. And at the same time, I began working, helping a small boutique owner dye very long that. I always wanted to get, I was doing families and I was raising a family. And those were all things that required a lot of juggling, which I know is the story for many artists. And so I began to draw with a group on Sunday mornings from life. And I also went back to ASU and began to take the painting curriculum. And I was working full time, so I really had to juggle a lot, but you do what you need to do if you want to do it enough. And if you're lucky enough, it's not always easy. So these are some of the first drawings I did after I got a studio. I had gone to ASU. Henry Schobel, I told Henry Schobel, who was fourth year painting professor there, that I thought I might want to go to graduate school. And he said, good, go get a studio and paint. And of course, then you have to decide what you're going to paint. And I had been drawing with this group at Dagny Hansen's studio in Phoenix on Sundays. And all the artists were modeling. I didn't model because I didn't want to model nude, but they were. And so I thought, well, I'll take those images and I'll begin to draw. And these are paper. They're probably, I'm thinking Strathmore, maybe Arches, and fairly good sized. I'm thinking they're probably 18 by 24 maybe. And so I thought I'd take a theme. You never know, what are you going to draw? What are you going to paint? And so these were just from the images that I was drawing every Sunday. And I thought, well, I'll make them the icons of American womanhood. So this is Pink Lady. Elaine von Bretzel was modeling, and she had been, she said, the original Susie Cream Cheese when Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention were working. And she had this gorgeous pink skin. So I did that. And then I did All American Girl, and I did Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman 1 and 2, which were also, people were wearing shoulder pads. And so I threw those in for the shoulders, and I began to distort the images. I then went on, this is probably my favorite. It's in a collection in Prescott. This was American Girl, Ham and Egg. And I think I was just beginning to use a lot of, I don't know, phrases, metaphors. And this was one where I made the thigh to the ham and the breast into the egg, and then kept the stars and stripes. I did Barbie. I grew up in Los Angeles. I grew up in actually North Hollywood. So storytelling and cartoon background for having. Of course, when you grow up, this Barbie. And then I began, because I'd been sort of assigned by Henry Schobel, just paint. I began to paint in oil, which I had been doing at ASU. And I did this one, Paper Dolls, which was based on my sister and me in an old photograph. And I used Picasso painting for color, thinking, well, I'll try to restrict myself on color. And then I did the four Cézanne Bathers. And I just took the title because I'd ordered a book from the ASU library, and there was this voice, this recorded voice, in the way computer voices are. And it sounded like that. It was Cézanne that I was looking for. But the Bathers were kind of funny. And I thought, well, that's the title of the painting. So I did this. Also, this was probably the 90s. And so I did charcoal on paper, and there was a lot of talk about the women that I was a feminist. And so there was a lot of talk about all these models who were skinny, and they were encouraged to just be starving. And then young girls were doing, they had bulimia and anorexia, and there was this movement to have women be thin. So I did these drawings, Flaca y Rubia. I was a Spanish minor in college, so Spanish was natural to go back and forth a little bit, and between the two languages. And so I did these because it made me angry to think about how women were being treated. And then these are the last of this series. And this was She's Perfect Big Chest, because hiking on what is now Piestewa Peak. And I heard these two guys talking, and one said, well, I just met this new girl and she's just perfect. And the other guy said, oh, big bust. I thought that was funny and sort of disgusting. And then I thought, well, this is a woman's life. I mean, she's got all these categories. She's got all these things that she's got to do. And so I did this and La Reina Está Muerta. And then I had been in a studio in Scottsdale. That's where I got the first studio that I had. And I did it with another student who'd been in class with me. He worked at night, I worked on weekends. And we were there for about 5 years in Scottsdale on Marshall Way. And then the city of Scottsdale decided they needed the building. And so, it's interesting. You get lucky sometimes. They have to actually compensate you to move you. So they compensated me to go to a new studio, which I thought was wonderful. And I went over to Indian School Road, where a number of artists from ASU were working. Built thinking in the 50s. It was pretty rickety, but it wasn't expensive. And I got some money to put in, and it had high ceilings. It was a good space. And so I went over there and started working. And I think that moves sometimes cause change. And in my case, I'd finished with the women. I was thinking a lot about what I would do next. And I ran across the work of an artist named Jennifer Bartlett, who was one of the conceptual artists. And she did a lot of assignments. She assigned herself dots, and she did a whole lot of dots based on mathematical precision. She took images and she framed them. So she'd do a whole lot of things that were, say, her first houses. They were all quite abstract. And I thought, well, this is maybe a good assignment for me. And so I started doing these pools. And I did them in the 90s, but I also went back to them about 2018. And you'll see later that that's what happened. So I was doing these are all paper. These are all gouache on paper with a lot of mixed media. And I liked fracturing. I'd been doing the figures. And then I thought, well, I'm going to fracture everything and begin to abstract it. But you can see there are still a lot of images that are things that you'd see around pools, backyard swimming pools, and I don't know, just general detritus, I guess, that collects around pools. So there's the black inner tube, and there's the chair, and there are pads, and there are what we used to use, boogie boards, and all kinds of things. I just titled these poolside 1, 2, and I don't really know at this point which is 1 and 2 and which is 18, 20. And umbrellas, sometimes windows. And these are sometimes plants. I mean, you have a swimming pool and you've got plants in pots and cups and rings and just general fracturing of the space and abstracting it. This was probably, I liked this, I discovered in my slides when I had them transferred for this program. I like this, particularly this collage, which I did not do much of. And of course, that happens so much in bookmaking. I think it's an interesting thing that maybe I'll pursue again. And this on the left is probably an actual painting in oil. I don't really have it identified, so I can't remember. I did some very linear work. Painting on the right was actually on the cover of the Phoenix Downtown magazine, because by then I was beginning to really work with they just partalized me. It was a lot of work. And then the last work I did in this series, just about the last, were these dot paintings, which I had taken from Jennifer Bartlett's work. I just used graph paper that had been, it had blue lines on it. And I just made a rule. I can't use more than 1 dot. I can change color, but it has to be dot by dot. And I found that difficult. I wasn't naturally a person that was very linear. And so I thought it was a good practice. And I actually liked these and thought they were pretty meditative. I still have them. They're in we have one guest bedroom here, and they're in that guest bedroom. And then I also came back to the pools in about 2018. There were lots of calls for art that were 12 by 12s, and I began to do outtakes, I called them, from larger things for you in a few minutes. And so I began to look at things again, abstractly, but not fractured. So I was taking these images and just trying to make them not representational, but related in the composition and by color, and still something that you could recognize. So I did that. I did poolside green umbrella. I just took, this was from our daughter's house in Phoenix. She has a backyard swimming pool and spa. And so I began to work with these 12 by 12s. The ocean always comes into my paintings one way or another. Water often comes back, I think because where I grew up and because we live in the desert and it's nice to have this association. Maybe I crave it, I don't know. But I was taking things out of some of my larger paintings and these outtakes, I call them. And of course, this is a buoy that'll show up later. And so will this red chair, which I took. But by giving each of these images a special place and their own little 12 by 12, I think I also gave them a status. And then 2001 came around. I had this downtown studio. There was a call for art. Actually, it was called the Great Phoenix Meltdown. And I was getting interested in doing maybe some work that was installation. And so Ned, my husband, had who's a welder, who can weld, we designed this table, built it, and I with holes, 4 holes, and then a sound plate. The microphones, speakers. And the first time I did it in downtown Phoenix in the dark, and people thought the sound was really something I had recorded earlier and attached to this. But in fact, it's just the sound of ice melting. And it's interesting because it will sound like drumming to you, I think. This was in my studio on Indian School Road on a first Friday, and I had an opening for it. So you hear some voices. This is 1 minute, and I think it's meditative, and it would probably be nice for me to quit talking. So I'm just gonna let you listen to it.
I like it because I think you're so much more.
So I did that, and looking back on it, I haven't run it for a long time. I probably showed it 3 times and then wrapped it up, and it's this. You don't have to worry about the ice, so obviously I didn't have to store that. I just stored the table, and when I showed it in the studio, I did give people little lighters. So if they wanted to melt the ice faster, they could sort of interact with it. But looking at it today, or when I was preparing this, I thought how meditative it was, and how much in that year, when I showed that, and the clip I gave you was probably February of 2001, how much I was sort of began to link into what would become the zeitgeist. There's an artist, David Bates, Texas. He was in New York for a time, but he's really a Texas artist and does some big cartoon-like pieces, big paintings. And he says that the path between what you paint, what you see and what you paint is filled with your life. I think that's true. And so obviously in September of 2001, the Twin Towers were bombed and went down. But that time was in New York with his friend, who's now his wife. Very frightening. And it was also so sad. And so I got, in October, after sort of we'd all adjusted to this event, I went to Arizona Art Supply and I got them to cut down some paper that was, I wanted it narrower. I'm not sure, I haven't looked at it for a while, so I'm not sure that, probably these were, let's see, 18 by 24 or maybe 24 by 30. But I wanted them narrow to reflect the Twin Towers. And then I just took them into the studio. I had 125 pages and I just began to paint them with India ink and a brush. And I wanted to sort of honor all the people who had died. Here on the left is the way it looked when it was hung for being photographed. At the time, Marilyn Szabo, who's a really, really fine photographer, was also doing copy art photography, and we put it into her studio and she photographed it. And so she gave, here are two images and here are the close-ups. At the time she photographed it, she left the door open and her studio was behind her house and a dove flew in and she was horrified. But I thought that was really appropriate because I thought there was something that was maybe peaceful in an odd way about this. And then when I'd finished with all these images and this paper, it's interesting how much paper I've used. I didn't realize it until, of course, I prepared this. I went around town and I did not want these to be framed. I wanted them to hang loosely. And so I went to all the fabric stores and got black grosgrain ribbon. And looking back on it, I realized today, you just go online and order it. But I had to drive from the west side of Phoenix to the east side of Phoenix to Mesa because there wasn't enough of it exactly what I wanted, which was about, I think, 1/4 of an inch. So these have now been stored for ever since, really. They were shown once at Kierland Commons out in North Scottsdale, and that was about it. And maybe one other time when I showed part of them for an event downtown in Phoenix. And then I went back to drawing and to big paintings because I was in this big studio. At this time, for one thing, I had a bear. He's in this current studio I have. I love a big stuffed bear. And he is going to show up in a lot of paintings going forward. But I'd also gotten interested in another artist named Paula Rego, who was she actually is Portuguese and she studied in London. She was in London painting, represented by Marlborough Gallery at the time, which is a big international gallery. And so using figures, animals, telling stories, and she was doing maybe I can begin to go back to figurative work and see what I can do telling stories. So here are some things I did. Oh, by the way, the bear is named Grin and Barrett, so that I thought was appropriate. First, I finished up what I had been doing, which were the pool paintings. And I took this as our granddaughter, Nicole, and a dog, their dog, then Cody, and Craig Johnson, who was a little, who lived across the street and swam in our pool all the time, a good friend. And I just thought it was nice. These are big, they're big drawings. They're 42 by 50 something. And I had a big roll of Arches paper and I just rolled it out and cut it. And then I sprayed it on the back so it would straighten out and taped it on the wall and drew. And I liked the idea of making these children big to give them status, because I think sometimes kids get kind of left out of things. And then the final one of these paintings was Rob and Ginger and Rob and Ginger. And this was when our son Rob was probably 13 with our dog Ginger in the backyard. And he was holding her and I said, oh, let me take a picture, which I did. And then when I transferred it to paper and drawing, I thought it was too static as just one image. And I instead, it was kind of a challenge. I don't say, for drawing. So I had to try to do it twice. And I thought that was interesting. And then also at that point. So, and I did these big paintings. I took the bear and I took girls, and I began to put a sort of narrative, but you have to figure it out. These things sort of just came out. And I did Carmen Miranda because I had this picture of Carmen Miranda from the 40s. And this isn't a particularly good slide. It's not quite this red, but I also did this working with the bear. The bear's in the way. He gets in the way sometimes. I did this painting. It's in a collection for Martha. It's a sort of, you could call it a portrait, because it is about her handing off the binoculars to her husband and ignoring him at the same time. And that's the husband down below. I did Girl Explains It to Bear. And this was just out of my head. I didn't use any imagery particularly, but you can see she's got the coat collar, so she's in power. And then I did this. This is probably the last one I did of the series. And I was beginning to think that it was time to be a painter full time. The business had grown so much that it was hard to sort of divide my time. And so I did this with which is Anubis, god in Egyptian mythology, and it's the dog of death. So she said there's not enough paint on it, which she do sometimes. And so then I put the birds in. And by then, the US had gone to war in Iraq. And, I was also associated with the news business. So this was in my face. And I thought, I'm going to do something that really, comments on this at least, but is sort of funny. And so I did this with Lady Liberty. And of course, she's clobbered the monkey on the head, with monkey in the fez. They'll show up later too. And there's, I don't know. So it was a marriage of convenience and a marriage made in heaven. And I meant that ironically. And then another move. And in this, we had been planning to build a house in Oracle. And we thought it would be a vacation home, but then we sold the business, which was good. And we moved to Oracle permanently. And so while I was waiting, and I got to have a studio on site, which was really nice. And while I was waiting for that, I did these drawings of Cinderella in Tombstone. And I started using the rats. I didn't know that I would become very friendly with pack rats because I'd never had them in Phoenix, but instead I started painting them, and of course they showed up. So I did this series of drawings. These are ink on paper, 2 colors of ink, and just ink pens, as I recall. My mom was sick at that time, and so those began to come out with Choose Vitals and the Crack Up and Scalpel Please and Heat Stroke. And then I took everything into the studio, and I really began to use a whole lot of imagery to tell stories. This is Crack Up. I took the bear, and he ran into a saguaro. We had a collection of wind-up toys, and I began to put those in. This was Yeehaw. I think that was just me. I was so happy. And then this began to have some wind-up toys. This was called Puppet Master, and I did a little self-assignment. I decided to do the 7 deadly sins. I only got through 5, but these were representations using some of the imagery that I had from Southern Arizona and some from childhood. I liked the puppets. I liked the strings and the imagery of that. And I did Sloth. This is every mother's cleaning up the room, right? And I did Mirror, Mirror, which I think is another Cinderella kind of, because maybe Cinderella's doing the ironing, and the wicked stepsister is looking at observing. And I did a few other things. These are not related to the 7 deadly sins. These are just images that I was using with the bear in trouble. Sometimes these are like this chicken's backyard, and I took the wind-up toy who will show up again. This chickie keeps showing up. I did like waters off a duck's back. Sometimes you do things, I think I was using metaphors, And also I wanted to see if I could paint. Can you paint rain? And then I did this painting, and I thought I'd stop for a minute and just talk about composition, because I wasn't usually painting in such a vertical format. And I did this one and thought a little bit about how you guide your eye into a painting. I used 3 of the wind-up toys we had. I blocked off the sides. I wanted it to be a street, and I wanted the duck going off into the sunset with the dog. This particular wind-up toy jumps and claps. And then this is, again, actually it was a monkey. I made it into a man with a fez, trying to stop things. And there's the spotted frog. And when I thought about it, I thought, where did he come from? And I think the only place was that I needed something to stop your eye before you went into the painting. We got in a dust storm, and I recorded it by taking all of these images and floating them in the air. This is actually one of the museums in, I think, Peoria. And the duck is there again. I always was using ducks, and the pig. And then when things got really busy, I just put everything in. I just larded everything into the painting. It started out as a single painting, and it was so crammed. I thought there's no way that this will work. And I got photos. I was almost stretching here in Tucson to just get a diptych. And then I painted the right half. I started with the left half, and then I had to integrate the right half. And at the time I did a little clay. And so that fish with the feet, that was actually a fish I still have. He's a clay fish on those giant feet. I think these zoos, sometimes this is about politics. I thought it might have been about the US with a lot of airplanes flying around, and they're all toys, but they're not entirely perfect. And then during that time, when I was doing all the stories with the toys, I also was using the animals. You saw the bear. And then one day, a jaguar showed up. He showed up. I had this girl. And of course, the title was Can the Leopard Change His Spot? And then because I'd been seeing all the information about the jaguar's sightings in southern Arizona, and because I'd begun to follow the Northern Jaguar Project, which you can see on Instagram, and it's very good, it's in Sonora, I think it's really does good work. I began to include the jaguar, and of course, you can't do that without crossing the border. And of course, I did this probably, I want to say 6 years ago, maybe, but the border came back. And I think in art, and you probably find this in your own work, it's like riding a bicycle. You never lose anything. They all come back one way or another. And so this was Toma'awa, which was in the Borderland show at the Museum of Northern Arizona. And pattern, again, I was interested in that. And then my husband and I had this big 50th wedding anniversary. And so I did this in honor of that. And I got the girl's dress. I look at a lot of imagery. This was from Martin Chambee, who was a very early photographer in Peru, probably in the 20s and 30s. And so this is a 1920s wedding that he photographed, just the dress. And I took that dress and I loved it. So I put the girl in the dress, and this is called In the Garden. And then I went back to water, and we had a big tin tub, and I thought it would be funny to put the cat in the tub, and now he was always, everything was Adam all the time. That's what my grandson Scott, who was doing scuba, I'm sorry, not scuba, but snorkeling. And so sometimes I would just that picture was like that. I mean, I had to fit him into the corner in order to make it work. But then I took the composition and began to organize around that image. I did Now What? Another sea painting. I did In the Drink. It would be fun to get the cat to do something it would never, which of course is, and I looked at all the rowing photos. Of course, occasionally there's somebody getting dumped into the water, and the dog was jumping into something, and the kids were trying to get to the surface. I just began to put as many images. I would just include all of these images into these paintings, and they got denser and denser. And then there's the cat. Remember, I said at the beginning with Land Ho that that was an outtake I did from this painting. Also the red chair, which is on the right. And then again, Scott doing his snorkeling. I just liked the idea of somebody looking out at you. The duck is looking at you. So is the sea lion. So all of this, and then I would add the toys so that I could just, you know, so, and you don't always know why, and sometimes that happens things. The women, and this is called Shave and Shine, and it was fun to do because I could alter the sizes. I mean, the shoe shine little brush along with the shoe shine wax is wrong size. So's the girl. She's way too small who's doing the, working on his feet. And the other woman is just big and strong, and she has the safety razor, so look out. This is Dance. Christopher and Ann Lusick own this painting. And the dancers are from Peru, from some dancers I saw in Peru. And then I liked using the pattern of the desert and some of the imagery. The dog, by the way, is just right out of a medieval dog that I saw in an art book. And this was Last Tango. The cat is now becoming less of a figure. I think this is a girl's life, pretty much from start to finish, or at least adulthood. And I mean, she's waiting to be asked to dance. There's a cat. Cats are wonderful, and they have their own lives. She's dancing with a dog she doesn't recognize, which I thought was Zorro. And then she meets up with her boyfriend, the cat. And in the background, there's a couple and she's pregnant. So I thought that was a whole story. And I liked the idea of your eye moving around the canvas and taking these different flooring to put in I took some things from traveling in Italy. And then a little nice story, a friend of mine saw the dog in the background and said, "Oh, I know who he is." And I went, "You do?" And he said, "Yes, he's waiting and he's hoping he can find somebody to dance with." And I thought that was a very nice look at it. I did some splish splash where I put the cat into baths. Everybody wants to look like this. I think she's pretty relaxed. And then I was getting my hair cut a lot and still do at Robert Markley's salon. And so I began to take images out of the salon, and I got the girl to cut the whiskers on this cat. This was one of the last I did in this series with the cat. Never Gamble with the Gypsy Queen. I loved that Gypsy Queen and her face. I took this from Hieronymus Bosch, The Ship of Fools. I thought I could do something with it. The kids are being ignored, and all the adults doing their things. And the last one that's like this, somebody saved the cat. I got an image of a leopard that had fallen into a well in India, of all places. And that leopard was so terrified. And so I put him on this boat and put the Ship of Fools back together and did that again, did the theme again. And then Last Tango. Well, I'm sorry, Showtime. I was getting interested in abstraction again and in fracturing space. And the cat is going out of the picture, and he has left the muse, which I think is with the head from Vermeer, little man with a clone, which I thought was me at the time. And the cat is saying, "I am out of here. I'm not going to do this anymore." So here I am with today. And this started, I started doing Borders and Crossings. I got interested in about 2018 because we were on the road a lot. And I was riding shotgun. And then I began to look at how busy it was. And I got interested in the structure of everything. And I had, as you can see, showtime. It was a different, something was going to change. And so I was feeding her a little. This is my deal.
Every morning I come in here and usually look at the end wall where I have work that I'm actually painting and working on. But today I hung everything sort of salon style just so you could sort of see what I'm up to. And these are some 12 by 12 paintings that I've completed in 2020. And this is my work table where I load up I have all my brushes, but I also like to keep the photographs that I'm using here in groups because that's what I derive a lot of my current paintings from. These are drawings that I've been doing. I call them drawings. They're acrylic paint on paper, but it's the way I take photographs and sometimes alter them and begin to work out some of the problems. Of course, sometimes details, and these last two drawings are details of a set of border paintings I've been working on. These are the images of all the cameras at border crossings and some of the big concrete barriers that you encounter. I also have been transferring these to paint. And in doing that, here's one I've been working on. This is from Algodones, which is just across the Arizona border in California. And so I often will take an image, several images that I'm working on, and combine them and cut them up and begin to get something that's a little bit abstract. I did that with this painting that I just completed, which is in at San Luis, the border crossing at San Luis, Rio, Colorado. And down here is one of the drawings, one of the painting photographs that I've cut up to get a little different angle and to begin to look at it, not so much as a record, but as an aesthetic statement.
So this is the first one I did, actually. I didn't show it in that little clip of my studio, but we were stuck in traffic on I-19. It was before the shutdown, and we'd been down in Tubac. And I thought, what the heck is going on here? Look at all these cars. I couldn't believe it. So I took that and I pretty much took it right out of the image. I probably narrowed it, but there weren't too many changes in it. I just kept it pretty monochromatic, except there these street signs are all over. And so let me go back for a minute. And so I used the blinking lights and all of that. I like that orange. And then I was in Yuma. I've been in a couple of shows in Yuma, and I had an invitational that I did there. I think I'll step there, and I'm beginning to alter it and add things. And then another checkpoint during the shutdown, just to get out of Dodge, we would go on some driving trips and never stop anywhere. And so this was the Arizona checkpoint on Arizona 82. I left the signs out. It's called Working Dog Ahead because that's what one of the signs said. But when I got finished with it, I just didn't like any of the words in there. And these checkpoints are so odd and so oddly bucolic in the middle of nowhere. And there's a bit of that here. I mean, my purpose in this was, and I wrote this down because I thought it was important. It was really to just look at the border and try to understand the story without getting into politics, and just to talk about the dailiness of it, because that was my observation, was that it was very busy before the shutdown, and that people were going back all the time, back and forth, and that borders are porous. That's why we speak Spanish in Tucson. Borders are porous. This was from Patagonia, from that same trip on Arizona 82. I called it Lost Summer. They'd parked all the school buses, all the schools were closed. There were high fire danger. That's a fire. We have them in Oracle. It's a fire sign that says what the danger is, and it has an arrow on it usually. Somber way. I did this. You've seen the work that I was beginning on this, and I finished it. This is also from San Luis POE, which is port of entry. Prepare to stop. And one of my friends said, "Oh, these almost look humorous," and I thought, well, you don't really look at them much when you're at the border. They vanish into the whole mess that is on borders, where they've added and added and added. I don't even know what, I tried to look these up to see what they did. Some are infrared, some are not. I couldn't even tell you what kind of cameras they are, but they are everywhere. And they don't want you to take pictures. So I had to really stand off to get a record and an image of these. And then this was Fraser Algodones, and I started adding people because that was one place where you did see a lot of people, because a lot of Californians go there. They call it Molar City, which I didn't know. But again, you can see this thing is just thrown together. It must have been a very old crossing, and then they put in all these ramps and railings and barbed wire and barriers, and it became kind of a mess. And this is these are all oil paintings, did I? But they're all oil paintings, under with maybe one layer of acrylic. It just depends. And then this is my work in progress. So today I'm fracturing again. This is San Luis POE with some guys crossing. Up in the right corner is the paper that I did, kind of to get loose and figure out what I might want to do. And I don't know where this is going. I do know one thing: when you look very hard at all this, all these images, all these structures, all this stuff that we use, suddenly it's just in your visual field. So now I painted these two, the shadow of the stop sign, stoplight, and the stoplight, and now stoplights wherever I am, just smack into my eyes. So I think that's kind of an interesting piece of what happens. And now I'm through. I'd love to answer any questions, and thank you so much for asking me to do this, which really made me look back and go back and look forward. By the way, I should say, I think this project of the border I'll be at it for 5 or 6 years, I'm sure, because I have a lot of other things I'd like to cover besides just.
Okay.
I'm done.
Okay, Diana, could you stop your screen share real quickly?
How do I do this? Nope.
Anyway, I just want to say that
done?
was wonderful.
And
Oh
am
my
I
God.
still?
Okay, there we go. Diana, I am just amazed at the breadth of your work and all that you have done. Oh my gosh, truly amazing. And I invite others in our group to unmute themselves and ask questions, whatever, let's questions, comments, what would you like to talk about here? Or have any questions for Diana? Anybody?
Diana, could you tell us more about your training and education?
Well, I grew up in LA and went to high school there. And then I went to Stanford, and that's where I got my degree in literature. And then every summer, I was encouraged not to be an artist. So that was those days. This wouldn't happen probably now, I hope. And I am going to give money to your scholarship fund. I think that's very important. And then I took all this art all the time. And when I went back to LA in the summers, I went to art, UCLA art, or I went to Otis Art Institute. I mean, I went wherever I could get some background. I never did get a a degree, an advanced degree in art. And I don't know, I sometimes think it might have helped, but then again, I really explored. You can see that I kind of just let fly a lot and didn't do what maybe was the most, what most likely to have been being done at the time. And I kind of looked for things to give me direction. So my education, and then of course I went to ASU, and I just did the undergraduate painting course, and I took every single class I could in painting and life drawing. And
Wow,
oh,
wonderful.
one other thing I want to say.
Go
I
ahead.
wrote this today specially because Oracle, of course, has an artist studio tour. We didn't have it this year, but we will next year. And this is from Judy Walsh, who always shows in my studio when we open up. And she does encaustic work. She also does beautiful jewelry. So this is a shout out to Judy.
Thank you, Diana. I remember going to your studio maybe 2 years ago, and that was wonderful seeing your work and your husband's work, who's also a sculptor. And I remember those necklaces; those were beautiful.
Yes.
That Judy makes. Yes,
Yeah.
wonderful.
They are. They are.
That was
And
great.
one other thing, I thought of this as I was doing it. I want to say a shout out to creatives because I was in business a lot. And I was with the Newspapers Association. I did a lot of things. And I always thought it was such an advantage to be an artist because you think outside the box. And honestly, people get stuck in business just going like the abandoned Animal House into the wall and they don't know how to get around it. And I think creatives do. And so shout out to artists. I don't think that maybe the business helped me be an artist. I think being an artist helped me in business. So just want to throw that out there.
Wonderful. Tell us, Diana, what you have an upcoming show, don't you, coming up this coming year?
I should, but because of the shutdown, everything has been backed up. So I was to curate a show at the Herberger Theater, which has been pushed back probably maybe even to the summer, I'm not sure. And then the year after that, I was to have my own show. And I really started painting on this new series. But I don't think it will be before 2022, maybe, and late in 2022. So yes, I hope it will go. So.
Wow, wonderful. We have wonderful comments here in the chat from Suzanne Moore. What a rich and candid description of the arc of your career, interests, approaches, and exploration of materials and concepts. Thank you, Diana and Paperworks for hosting. Great job, Diana, from Ann Lusick. Nice to see your evolution. Roberta Warshaw, amazing work. Thank you so much. So we'll send you all these comments, but it's just nice to see.
Yeah.
And anybody else have anything to say to Diana or where they can see her work now or anything else? Okay, well, Diana, thank you so much. And I know this has been so much work for you to put this together, the whole technical thing. And we've practiced a couple of times and I'll get up, we'll put the recording up on our YouTube page. And
I did want to say one other thing because of course we get helped along the way. Jim Cowlin, who is a member, and Barbara Callan's a good friend of mine. Jim Cowlin came over and helped me put all these slides together because I had no idea.
Well, it was a great, it was great.
Photographer, as you know, probably from seeing his work. So, yeah.
That was wonderful. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Jim. Colin, thank you.
Diana, I would just like to say that I really enjoyed your use of the bear and the jaguar and of the animals in your work.
Yeah.
And, it was really fun to see those threads running through your work.
Good. I'm glad. I think that who knows? They'll probably show up again.
Mhm.
because what I said about riding a bicycle, I think things come back. I don't know. I think art is it's part of your life, and so it reflects in many respects what you're doing. And then, of course, characters take on their own life, I think.
They do, I agree.
Yeah, yeah, and maybe subjects do too. I'm not sure about that, but and I think if I can do, I would like to do the border. I would like to do a whole series of portraits of people who've been associated with border. I have a good friend here who grew up in Nogales, and I already asked her if she'd model for me, just simple portraits. And she said, "Oh, I can take you down to Nogales. And, I have all these friends, and we can do that." And I thought, that would be a really nice way of looking at the border that isn't often looked at. I'm trying to get the politics out of it if I can, because I think it's so much more than that.
Yes.
Diana, a great suggestion is to make a trip to Ruby, Arizona. You will get a totally different perspective of the border.
Good. Where is Ruby? I don't know.
You would travel south.
Where is it?
It's south by the border. Head towards Arivaca and keep on going.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I have a whole list that I guess the state of Arizona puts out a list of all the border ports of entry and all the checkpoints, which move. They're not always there exactly where they say they're going to be, but they're all listed. And so Ruby, I'm going to go down there. That's great. Because another thing, of course, was that I was kind of stuck for driving around. We went down to Douglas and went to Naco, where I remember crossing the border in 2000, just driving across.
Wow.
It's changed a great deal. We went there, of course, very quiet, and you had to find a place to stay that was safe, really, because we hadn't gotten our vaccines yet. So, but thanks for the tip. I will go to Ruby, and I know Arivaca, so that would be great. Thanks.
Plan the whole day at Ruby.
Can I ask, is Ruby, Linda, a ghost town? Because I think I was wondering I don't know if I missed it, but the ghost towns would be another interesting way to look at the border.
Yes, Ruby is
Yes.
an old mining
Yes.
town. And it's just very interesting because it's so close to the border, and there's a real surprise down there that you're going to be shocked at. I've lived in Arizona all my life, and when I went around a corner to Ruby and saw, I won't tell you, I'll just let you be surprised.
Oh, that's very exciting. I'm glad. That's good. You do see that on the border. I mean, even down at Naco, you see there's a beautiful old corral that's right next to the border wall. And you think, these guys just, all the cattle, they ran the cattle wherever they ran them. Because, the border wasn't such a big thing. And so I think anybody who's lived here a long time, my husband's, both of our families, really, my grandparents and Ned's grandparents were here very, very early before statehood. So you do get a real feeling. I think things get distorted sometimes because the big news stories, speaking as somebody who was in news, they only tell the most exciting things. I guess that's what I'd say.
I agree.
So,
Anybody else? We're going to close this up. Well, Diana, I just want to thank you again. It was wonderful.
thank you. It was fun, actually, as it turned out, finally.
Yeah, you are amazing. I can't believe all your work, the breadth of it. It's pretty amazing. So
Yeah.
I want to thank you. And I have one more announcement. If Sherry Pasternak is still with us, I'm sorry, I forgot to announce something she wanted to announce. And Sherry, are you still there? I'm not sure. Maybe we can unspotlight, take the spotlight off of Diana. How do we do that? Remove spotlight. Okay.
This is-
Okay, got it. And is Sherry Pasternak here? I guess not. Okay. Well, anybody else? I just think it was a good meeting. We're getting better at this Zoom stuff. Diana was a great speaker. We have so much stuff going on within our groups, and I love how we, us creatives, work with each other and inspire each other. So you inspired me, Diana. So thank you so much. And we'll see you all next month, and maybe before that at different meetings here, like this Saturday for the Poetry Center. Okay, it's 12 o'clock. We did it.